Some people fall in love and feel calm. Others fall in love and slowly begin to panic. A simple delayed reply can ruin their entire day. A small change in tone can feel like the beginning of abandonment. One moment they feel close to someone, and the next moment they feel emotionally unsafe for reasons they cannot fully explain. They replay conversations in their head for hours. They search for hidden meaning inside ordinary words. They crave reassurance constantly, yet even reassurance fades quickly, forcing them back into the same cycle again and again. Loving someone starts to feel less like peace and more like emotional survival. That is the hidden reality of attachment anxiety, and millions of people live inside it every single day without understanding why. The strange part is that many anxiously attached people already know they are overthinking. They know they are becoming emotionally overwhelmed. They know their fear feels bigger than the situation itself, yet their body reacts before logic has time to speak. Scientists and psychologists have discovered that attachment anxiety is deeply connected to the nervous system. The fear of losing connection can activate the same alarm systems connected to danger and survival. That is why a cold text message can feel emotionally painful. That is why distance can create panic, and that is why love can feel addictive, exhausting, comforting, and terrifying all at the same time. Many people believe anxious attachment simply means being too needy. The truth goes much deeper than that. Beneath the clinginess, reassurance seeking, and emotional intensity usually lives an invisible fear that started long before the relationship itself. Some people learned very early in life that love could suddenly disappear, become inconsistent, or feel emotionally unsafe. Years later, those same fears quietly enter adult relationships and begin controlling emotions from behind the scenes. Most people never realize it is happening. In this video, you will learn what attachment anxiety actually feels like from the inside. You will understand why anxious people overthink everything, why silence feels emotionally painful, why reassurance never fully lasts, and why relationships can become a cycle of fear and emotional chasing. You will also learn lesser-known psychological truths about attachment patterns, emotional triggers, and the hidden reason anxious people often lose themselves inside relationships. Most importantly, you will understand why anxious attachment is far more connected to survival instincts than weakness. Stay until the end because the final part of this video explains the emotional shift that slowly helps anxious people feel safe in love again, and it may completely change the way you understand your own relationships. Welcome to our channel, where we explore human psychology, relationships, attachment styles, and the hidden patterns that shape emotional behavior. Subscribe now and join us for more deep psychological insights that help you understand yourself and the people around you. Attachment anxiety is the constant fear that the person you love could emotionally leave you at any moment. Sometimes there is no clear reason for the fear. The relationship may look completely fine from the outside, yet inside, the anxious person feels emotionally unstable almost all the time. A delayed message suddenly feels personal. A different tone of voice creates tension in the chest. A little distance feels much bigger than it really is. Small changes become emotional signals that the relationship may be falling apart. That is why anxiously attached people spend so much time overthinking. Their mind is always trying to predict danger before it happens. This fear usually creates a deep need for reassurance. They want to hear that everything is okay. They want confirmation that the love is still there. Even after receiving reassurance, the calm feeling often disappears quickly. Hours later, the anxiety quietly returns again. That cycle can become exhausting because their emotions start depending heavily on another person's attention, affection, or consistency. When the relationship feels close, they feel safe. When the relationship feels distant, their emotional state begins collapsing almost immediately. Many people misunderstand this behavior. They think anxious people are simply dramatic or overly emotional. The deeper truth is that anxious people are usually reacting to fear rather than trying to create problems. They do not just fear losing the relationship itself, they fear losing emotional safety. The connection becomes the place where they search for stability, comfort, validation, and security. So when that connection feels threatened, their nervous system reacts as if something serious is happening emotionally. A lot of this pattern begins very early in life. Some people grew up receiving love that felt unpredictable. Sometimes affection was present, sometimes it disappeared without warning. Sometimes emotional support existed only under certain conditions. A child growing up in that environment slowly learns that love can become unstable at any moment. Years later, those same fears quietly follow them into adult relationships. Their body remembers inconsistency even when their mind wants to relax. That is why anxious attachment feels so confusing from the inside. One part of them wants closeness deeply. Another part constantly fears the pain that closeness could eventually bring. Relationships stop feeling calm and natural. Every emotional shift feels important. Every silence feels heavy. And slowly, love begins feeling less like peace and more like something emotionally dangerous that could disappear without warning. For someone with attachment anxiety, overthinking becomes almost automatic. Their mind is constantly searching for signs that something has changed emotionally. A simple text message can suddenly carry enormous emotional weight. They stare at reply times and begin calculating meaning from silence. 10 minutes feels normal. 1 hour starts feeling uncomfortable. Several hours can create a full emotional spiral. During that time, their thoughts begin racing in every direction. Maybe the other person is losing interest. Maybe something feels different now. Maybe they said the wrong thing earlier without realizing it. The mind keeps searching for answers because uncertainty feels emotionally unbearable. Many anxiously attached people reread conversations repeatedly. They study wording, punctuation, and tone as if hidden clues are buried inside ordinary messages. A shorter reply feels colder. A missing emoji suddenly feels important. A sentence that once sounded warm now feels distant. Even tiny changes in energy become difficult to ignore. While another person may barely notice those differences, the anxious mind immediately locks onto them. That is because emotionally anxious people become highly alert to rejection cues. Their nervous system treats emotional distance almost like a warning signal. This creates a painful difference between secure attachment and anxious attachment. A secure person usually sees space as temporary and normal. They assume the relationship is stable even during silence. An anxious person experiences that same space very differently. Silence feels emotionally loaded, distance feels dangerous. Their brain immediately starts preparing for abandonment long before anything has actually happened. That is why even healthy relationships can feel emotionally exhausting to someone with attachment anxiety. Sometimes the fear becomes so intense that they struggle to focus on anything else. They check their phone constantly. They replay the last interaction again and again. Their mood begins depending entirely on whether the other person feels emotionally close or emotionally distant that day. One affectionate message can calm their nervous system instantly. One cold interaction can ruin their entire emotional state for hours. The hardest part is that many anxious people already know they are overthinking while it is happening. They understand their reactions may seem extreme, yet awareness alone does not stop the emotional panic. Their body reacts first, and logic arrives later. That is why attachment anxiety feels so emotionally overwhelming. The fear does not come from imagination alone, it comes from a nervous system that learned to stay hyper alert to emotional shifts, changes in affection, and any sign that connection could suddenly disappear. From the outside, anxious attachment can sometimes look overwhelming. People see the double texts, the repeated questions, the emotional reactions, and the constant need for reassurance. They see someone asking, "Is everything okay?" even after hearing that things are fine. They see someone becoming emotional very quickly over situations that may seem small to everyone else. Because of that, anxiously attached people are often labeled as needy, clingy, dramatic, or too sensitive. But underneath those behaviors usually lives something much deeper than attention seeking. Underneath the intensity is fear. Most anxious people are not trying to control love, they are trying to stop themselves from being abandoned. That fear quietly shapes the way they communicate, react, and connect. When they feel distance, they move closer emotionally because closeness feels safer than uncertainty. They seek reassurance because reassurance temporarily calms the panic inside them. Sometimes they ask the same questions again and again because the emotional security fades quickly after receiving comfort. The relief never fully stays. This can create moments where they become emotionally reactive very fast. A small disagreement suddenly feels huge. A shift in energy feels personal. When someone they love becomes quieter or emotionally distant, the anxious mind immediately starts filling the silence with fear. Their emotions rise quickly because their nervous system reacts as though the relationship itself is under threat. Even when they try to stay calm, the fear keeps pushing itself to the surface. The painful part is that many anxious people are fully aware of how overwhelming they can seem sometimes. They often notice their own behavior immediately after reacting. They replay conversations in their mind later and feel embarrassed by how emotional they became. They worry they asked for too much reassurance. They feel guilty for needing so much closeness, and after the emotional moment passes, shame usually arrives right behind it. That shame becomes another hidden layer of attachment anxiety. They begin apologizing for their emotions constantly. They say sorry for overthinking, sorry for caring too much, sorry for becoming emotional, sorry for needing reassurance. Deep down, many of them secretly fear that their emotions will eventually push people away. Yet those emotions usually come from wounds they never fully learned how to regulate in the first place. A lot of anxiously attached people spent years trying to earn emotional security from others because they never fully learned how to create that safety inside themselves. So when they finally connect deeply with someone, they hold on to that connection tightly, sometimes too tightly. Because to them, emotional closeness does not just feel comforting, it feels necessary for survival. One of the most painful parts of attachment anxiety is the cycle it creates inside relationships. The more fear someone feels, the more they reach for closeness. At first, it may look small. Extra messages, more reassurance, more attention, more emotional checking. They start watching the relationship more carefully because they are trying to protect the connection before anything goes wrong. But slowly, that fear changes the entire emotional dynamic between two people. Fear creates clinginess. Clinginess creates pressure. Pressure creates distance, and distance creates even more panic. That is why anxious attachment often turns into a cycle of chasing and fearing at the same time. The anxious person moves closer emotionally because they are desperate to feel safe again, but the intensity of that fear can sometimes overwhelm the other person, especially if the other person already struggles with emotional closeness themselves. As emotional pressure grows, the relationship begins losing its natural rhythm. The anxious person usually notices the distance immediately. Maybe the replies become slower, maybe the energy feels colder, maybe affection becomes less consistent. The moment they sense emotional space, panic rises again. They begin trying even harder to reconnect. More questions appear. More reassurance is needed. More overthinking starts filling their mind. Their nervous system becomes completely focused on restoring emotional closeness as quickly as possible. Sometimes reassurance temporarily calms everything down. A loving message, affection, or emotional validation can create instant relief. For a moment, the fear disappears. The relationship feels safe again. Their body relaxes. Their thoughts slow down. But that relief usually fades much faster than people realize. Hours later, or sometimes even minutes later, the anxiety quietly returns. The fear was never fully healed underneath. It was only temporarily soothed. That is why attachment anxiety feels emotionally exhausting for both sides of the relationship. The anxious person keeps chasing emotional certainty that never fully lasts. They are constantly trying to reach a feeling of permanent safety that always seems slightly out of reach. Even during happy moments, part of their mind remains alert for signs that something could suddenly change. The hardest part is that they usually do not want to feel this way. Most anxiously attached people hate how emotionally reactive they become. They wish they could stay calm. They wish they could trust the relationship without needing constant reassurance. But attachment anxiety does not always respond to logic. Their body reacts before their mind has time to slow things down. The fear arrives instantly, and once it appears, it can completely take over their emotions before they even realize what is happening. Living with attachment anxiety feels emotionally exhausting in ways that are difficult to explain to people who have never experienced it. There is a constant tension running quietly in the background of the relationship, even during good moments. The anxious person rarely feels fully relaxed emotionally because part of their mind is always preparing for something to go wrong. They think carefully before sending messages. They replay conversations after they end. They worry about saying the wrong thing, sounding too emotional, asking for too much, or becoming difficult to love. Even small interactions can carry emotional weight that stays in their mind for hours. A lot of anxiously attached people secretly feel like they are never fully enough for the people they love. No matter how much affection they receive, there is often a deep fear that someone else could eventually replace them, lose interest in them, or slowly drift away emotionally. That fear quietly affects the way they behave inside relationships. They begin trying harder and harder to keep the connection safe. Sometimes they become overly understanding. Sometimes they ignore their own needs. Sometimes they stay silent about things that hurt them because they fear conflict could create distance. Many anxiously attached people slowly turn into people pleasers without even realizing it. They become highly focused on keeping the other person happy because emotional harmony feels connected to emotional safety. They may sacrifice boundaries, suppress emotions, or change parts of themselves to avoid rejection. Over time, the relationship can slowly become centered around maintaining connection at any cost. Their own emotional identity starts fading in the process. That is why attachment anxiety can make someone lose themselves inside love. Their emotional stability becomes deeply dependent on another person's attention, affection, and reassurance. When the relationship feels good, they feel emotionally calm. When the relationship feels uncertain, everything inside them starts collapsing. Their nervous system becomes tied to the emotional availability of another person. That creates a terrifying feeling because love no longer feels stable. It feels unpredictable. One of the saddest parts of attachment anxiety is that someone can feel deeply loved and still feel emotionally unsafe at the exact same time. They can hear the words, "I love you," and still fear abandonment underneath. The reassurance reaches their mind for a moment, but the fear continues living deeper inside the body. That emotional conflict becomes exhausting because they are constantly fighting between wanting to trust love and fearing the pain of losing it. And after a while, relationships stop feeling exciting and natural. Love starts feeling heavy. Every emotional shift feels important. Every silence feels personal. Slowly, connection stops feeling peaceful and starts feeling more like survival. The saddest part about anxious attachment is that these people usually love very deeply. They care in ways that are intense, loyal, and emotionally sincere. They notice small details that other people miss completely. A change in mood, a shift in energy, a different tone in someone's voice. They pay attention because the relationship matters deeply to them. When they love someone, they give emotional energy constantly. They think about the person often. They try hard to make the relationship work. They want closeness, connection, and emotional security more than almost anything else. A lot of anxiously attached people become the kind of partners who remember everything. They remember conversations, emotions, little habits, favorite songs, stressful days, and quiet moments that seem insignificant to everyone else. They naturally invest themselves emotionally because love feels incredibly important to them. When someone they care about is hurting, they feel it deeply. When the relationship feels unstable, it affects their entire emotional world. Their heart stays fully involved almost all the time. But because fear becomes attached to the love, they rarely get to relax inside it. Even during beautiful moments, anxiety quietly waits underneath the surface. Part of them keeps wondering how long the closeness will last. Part of them fears that something could suddenly change without warning. Instead of simply enjoying love, they often monitor it constantly. They search for signs of emotional safety while also preparing themselves for emotional loss at the same time. That emotional conflict becomes exhausting because their mind rarely stays present. While other people experience love as comfort, Anxious people often experience it as uncertainty mixed with hope. They can be lying next to someone they deeply love and still feel afraid inside. They can receive affection and still question whether it will disappear later. The relationship may feel stable in reality, yet emotionally they remain alert for signs that the connection could weaken over time. Many anxiously attached people spend more energy fearing the end of love than fully experiencing the love itself. Their attention becomes trapped between closeness and fear. They want connection deeply, but they also fear how painful losing that connection could become. That fear slowly steals their ability to feel emotionally safe even inside relationships that genuinely care about them. Sometimes the person they love has no idea how much emotional pressure exists inside their mind every single day. On the outside, they may seem caring, emotional, or sensitive. But internally, they are carrying the constant weight of trying to protect a connection they are terrified of losing, even while the relationship is still alive and present in front of them. Being the anxious one in love feels like holding someone tightly, while secretly fearing they could disappear at any moment. Even during the happiest moments, part of your mind stays alert. Part of your heart keeps preparing for distance, silence, or loss before anything has even happened. You love deeply, you care deeply, you give your emotions completely, but underneath all that love is a quiet fear that never fully goes away. And maybe that is the exhausting part. It is not loving too much. It is carrying fear inside the love the entire time. It is needing reassurance and still struggling to feel safe after receiving it. It is hearing someone say, "I love you," while another part of you still wonders how long that love will stay. That emotional conflict slowly drains people from the inside because their heart wants closeness while their nervous system keeps expecting abandonment. Many anxiously attached people spend years blaming themselves for feeling too emotional, too sensitive, or too needy, when in reality they are carrying emotional patterns that were built long before the relationship even started. They learned to fear losing connection because connection once felt uncertain, unstable, or unpredictable. And after a while, they stop experiencing love peacefully because their mind becomes focused on protecting it from disappearing. But awareness changes things. The moment someone begins understanding why they react this way, healing quietly begins. The fear slowly becomes easier to recognize. The emotional panic slowly loses some of its power. And for the first time, love starts becoming something that feels safer instead of something that constantly feels at risk. Maybe this video explained feelings you could never fully put into words before. Maybe parts of this felt painfully familiar. Or maybe it helped you understand someone you love a little more deeply. Either way, attachment anxiety is far more common than most people realize, and many people are silently carrying these emotions every single day behind the scenes of their relationships. If this video helped you understand yourself or your relationships a little better, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep psychology and relationship content. And if you connected with this topic, share your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes understanding begins the moment people realize they are not alone in what they feel.